the state or around the world that are interested in Galion. It's great to have you here. Worth remarking that it's August 27th, and this is the period of time between when school used to start and when it's already started. So here in Galion, a big weekend. Some people talk about local rivalries not being important, but I got to tell you, when you can beat Bucyrus as soundly as we did on Friday night, it does matter. So it's a good start of the week here in Galion. I want to congratulate really all of our fall athletic teams off to good starts. In 2 weeks on the, I guess it's 3, Matt, and on September 15th will be the first big cross-country meet, and looking forward to that. Got approval for those people interested in perhaps renting one of our pavilions, one of our new pavilions, the Amons Pavilion, which had we had permission to have toilet flushing and use of water that way. We've now been approved for potable water, so the water's on out there, and it makes that facility out there for family reunion or any kind of group event really one of the nicest places in our community to host that. And I think will really turn out to be an asset to the cross-country events, which are among the largest travel and tourism events in the community. So that over the next couple of weeks, as we move to summer into the fall, it also turns out to be a good time for the city of Galion to bid some of its construction projects. So we've been working kind of patiently, waiting for a set of plans, and really soon we'll be asking council for permission to bid a bathroom at the depot area, and along the lines of renting out our facilities. I think that will really allow that really nice facility to take off in terms of rentals for, again, family reunions, school events, just about any kind of activity that would be for up to 50 people. So those two things are going well. Just in that whole area of rentals, we're probably 100% ahead of last year in terms of the number of people renting either our old-fashioned pavilions or really now our 3 really nice places that are enclosed and have some of the amenities that make for a nice birthday party, etc. So as I kind of talk about the end of the season, I would want to note that this coming weekend is the last scheduled weekend for the Splash Park to be open. But I'd want to assure you that if we have that long projected week of 85-degree plus weather or 80-degree plus weather, that we will do as we have in the past, seek some city employees to volunteer to go out and keep the Splash Park open in the early evening, kind of from the time folks get off work until it's time to finish up the day and get ready for school and those kinds of things. So once again, another great year at the Splash Park, and continue to have that reinforcement that it was a great investment on the part of the city, just based on the amount of laughter and the number of kids that leave having had a great time out there. So again, we're moving from one season to the other. As you drive through Heist Park, you'll see that it's been a few weeks, but the paving's done, and I'm happy to say that the fence around the tennis court is wrapping up, and so we'll soon be able to get our girls tennis team back home and finish up their varsity season with home meets, and in the sense that they've been traveling on the road since their season began a week or a week and a half ago. So those type of activities, bathrooms. Well, one other thing I might say before we see if we have some questions coming in. One of the things that will happen between now and the end of the year is that City Council will pass an ordinance that will authorize window improvement and other improvements at the depot itself that are designed to address the deficiencies on the external shell. Which is to say, we had a friend go up and and fly over it with the drone and take some very good pictures. So we've identified the spots along the roof that need repaired, and certainly if you go over there, you'll see that there's a need of major window repair, both in replacing some of the panes, but probably more importantly, we've had some wood rot on some of the frames around some of the more prominent windows, which would be on the west side of the building. So there's a fair amount of work to do, and at this point it's really a matter of how much the City Council wants to authorize in an ordinance so that we can get that exterior shell done. So we're hoping not to shortchange that project, and it's likely that it'll be let sometime late this year and may carry over into 2019. So that's sort of an update on our recreational facilities and some of the more fun parts of the job, and we'll see if we've got any questions now before I go to the water line break and when that will be open, or when that will be completed, the repair, and when Harding Way West will be open for traffic. So.
Yes, Mayor. We do have a question tonight. It comes from Cindy over at the Depot Pavilion. She wants to know if there will ever be air conditioning.
It's a good question. The short answer is no, unless we're fortunate enough to have somebody make a donation. It is, I imagine in the middle of the summer it does get pretty hot, and when there's not much wind, just opening up the windows is probably not enough ventilation. However, I was there on Saturday, not to argue with Cindy, but I was there on Saturday, and they only had 2 of the 6 side panels open, and it was comfortable to eat ice cream in, and so it's unlikely that we'll have air conditioning in the pavilion until the depot itself has been fully renovated. So I think that's probably the best way to answer. Probably the more urgent temperature control or need is probably making sure we have ways to keep it hot enough during the winter. When you turn those heaters on, they're really pretty loud, so you'll have to have a combination of a roaring fire and the heaters that are in the building now, kind of on halfway rather than full blast. So.
Okay. Next question tonight comes from Mike. He says, we pay $25 extra on every vehicle we register in the city of Galion. We have paid that extra $25 for years. When are we going to stop having to pay that on tags, and what does that money go for?
Well, that's a good question. I think the short answer is, as far as when are we going to be paying it, probably never. I think some of the other communities, and I'll try to, without getting too involved, I'll try to give you an answer. One of the important things that's on the ballot this fall, and it's not on the ballot in Galion, but it will affect Galionites who live in Ontario, is an income tax that they are trying to pass that would provide for funding for, in that case, residential streets in Ontario. So without going on a long rant about that, I'm very much against it, and I wish there was some way that all the Galionites that live in Ontario could vote on that measure. Likewise, Bucyrus has a relatively large, I believe it's a 0.5% income tax, which they use to fund their street repairs. And that's how they've stabilized their streets. Long before I was mayor, the decision was made to approach local street paving needs by passing at 5% increments an add-on to your license plates. So that's how the city at this point has chosen to fund local street paving. So the second or the other part of the question is, what does that money go for? And I could show you in 30 seconds, right in the budget, where that money goes for. And it goes to fund the street repair program. And so what you would see if you go back a few weeks is that we sold and had paved about $225,000, $230,000 of repairs, that small amount that you saw. Every bit of the funding for that project, plus a little bit more, came from that license plate tax. Those dollars, just the last answer is that those license plate tax, that permissive tax, is in a separate fund within the city budget. So again, not every citizen, everyone who's concerned like Mike can look at that, but the money is separate. The money goes specifically to street paving, and we've been using nearly every bit of it each year that I've been mayor. So when you see like next year, for instance, maybe a $300,000 paving project passed by council in the springtime, you can count on $175,000 approximately of that, whatever that amount is, coming from those license plate fees.
Okay. Next question tonight comes from Caleb. He asks, will Dawsett Avenue ever get any storm sewer drains?
Not without an assessment. I was having this conversation, quite honestly, with my wife about the fact that we don't have adequate storm sewers on the little street the city street that I live on. And without curbs, you really don't have very effective stormwater management. The best that we can do is where there's areas where, and this is largely north of Dawsett, along what I call the numbered streets. There's some spots where the land to the north of Dawsett, off of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, Hensley, that area of town, where the ground is actually lower than the streets around it. And so how we effectively get that ponding out is an ongoing problem, and it's something that needs to be engineered. But back to the main question, until are the resources to put curbs and active catch basins and stormwater to drain that water off in that area, you're unlikely to see that. And if you take this last question and this one and tie it together, and I'm doing this from memory, but I think it's about $60 a foot for the curb and gutter that goes on a street that would go from no curb and gutter like Dawsett to where the water just runs off, to a situation where there were catch basins and pipe underground. And so it would be a pretty expensive project on a street that's right around 5,000 feet. So if you take, and I could be wrong on this, and somebody could type in or note, but it's about 60 foot, I think, is what we're paying for curb and gutter the last year or two. So you take that times 5,000 feet, it gets you an idea of how much curb and gutter was it. It's either 300,000 or 3 million. It's 300,000 for just curb and gutter when we repaved Dawsett. So it would take that additional amount of resources coupled with a 1 or 2 year staged resurfacing of Dawsett to accomplish that. So, my guess is it's probably $1.3 million to accomplish what Caleb was asking. And so it's likely if that was done in the short run, there would have to be an assessment put on the property owners that would benefit from that. And quite honestly, while it's pretty common in some communities, that idea of property owners paying for assessments to improve their sewer or street has really not been a tool that Galion has used with any frequency in a generation or more. So that's probably 3 in a row where I've given the honest, the straightforward answer the best I could with a little explanation. But certainly not the answer that any of these people, Cindy or Mike or Caleb, it's not the answer they wanted, and I'm aware of it, but I don't want to mislead them. In a world where you have $175,000 of street paving money coming off of the license plate tax, you can see that it would take a lot of those 175s to build $1.3 million worth of roadway and stormwater improvements. So.
Okay. Next question tonight comes from Marcia. She asks, what is going on with the sleep-in hotel and money being made off of it by the chamber?
Oh, I don't know what to say about that. Exactly. The chamber's not made any money off of that. Over the past week, there were a couple of things I could say about the author of that article. One was this really fantastic article in the Gannett papers about the work that Mr. Kent does up at the Legion, great cook and all that stuff. That was an interesting article. The one that he wrote about the sleep-in, I don't know, I really just do not know where that article's coming from. Honestly, I didn't appreciate the slam that they contacted city officials and didn't get any answer. There's really no answer to give. What the story that's been floated out there. I mean, I get it when people who love to fool around on social media like to put out stuff that's 20% true or 5% true, but I don't quite understand when the newspaper prints something that has so little fact involved, so little attempt to verify anything. So I'm sorry that this person got the impression from that article that somehow the chamber made any money off of that. To the extent that it's worth talking about anymore, I'd say that one of the chamber's president's son, who sells hotel franchises for a living, and who sold the franchise for the sleep-in for this particular unit, the notion that he made money is kind of it's something that Homer Simpson would have understood. So to misrepresent that and to get people sort of trapped in that nonsense, of course the salesman who sold the franchise made money on it. How that became newsworthy, I'll never know. And the purpose of sort of insinuating that the chamber and other people made money is really the kind of goof that honestly I thought we were past. I thought it was in the rearview mirror. But these individuals, I'm going to talk a bit about it here because some people will say, what the hell is he talking about? And other people will say, well, I'm glad he said that. This Tony Johnson character. I've been involved in local government and public affairs for a long time. This individual, I guess he grew up here, hasn't lived in Galion forever, and was one of the biggest, I would describe him as troublemakers back in 2012. A whole bunch of misinformation. Let me tell you the last time I heard from Tony Johnson, the author of all this nonsense, and then I'll come back to the sleep-in here in a second. The last big issue that Tony was involved in was saying that the widening, what I call the McDonald's project, I don't know why, but that widening was never going to happen. That there was never any ODOT money. That the previous administration had lied to you and that the current administration wasn't going to be able to do it. Well, the next time you're sitting kind of in gridlock on Portland Way and wondering, gosh, how could we ever function without this third lane? Remember that Tony Johnson said that would never happen. So his track record on doing anything other than stirring up trouble is pretty not to be counted on. So, the other issues that are raised in that article and by the person that knows about the chamber making money, the person asked the question, the hotel, it's all public record. So we are in conversation with the owners of the hotel. I think it's important that the fees and the taxes that they owe, and any kind of use agreement that they've signed are fulfilled, and that's our goal. And so, yeah, sure, we want to make sure we get paid as well. But I got to tell you, and I'll just go on for one more second about this. One of the things that's funny about that is for those people who have stayed in the hotel or had a family member or friend stay in the hotel, or the dozens of people who stay in the hotel during the summer to come to Graders games and spend the weekend there. I've yet to hear one complaint. So I see a lot of the people that come here and have a chance to stay here. I just mentioned that the first couple years, and this is not the Graders TV show, but I got to be honest with you, the first couple of years, it was embarrassing, just in the small way, to have people coming from out of town to those games and staying in Marion and staying in Ontario. I mean, they stayed in Bucyrus too, and that's probably slightly better. I say that jokingly. But now they have a place to stay in our community. And they talk about how much they like the uptown. They know the names of our local restaurants. And they like our little town more than some of these people who are causing trouble in the community. So quite honestly, to sort of wrap up the answer, I wish those people who come to visit Galion would stay and live here more than some of the people who continue years into this to fight what is a positive trend in Galion. So, yeah, we want it to summarize. We want the hotel to pay all their obligations. Of course we do. They have done pretty well. Most of it's public record. But to suggest that there's some sort of ill-gotten gain by the Chamber of Commerce or individuals associated with the Chamber of Commerce is the kind of crap that, like I said a few minutes ago, I thought we had put that in the rearview mirror and that we had kind of advanced as a community. But you know, I got people on our fanny every day complaining about the Valero and the project and the future growth that'll come out there. So, you know, some people have a mindset where they want Galion to be unsuccessful. I don't happen to represent you. I don't think most of us do. But there's some people out there, Tony Johnson and his buddies, you know, that they won't be happy until Galion is run into the ground. And I hate to tell them that there are thousands of people in town who are pushing back every day to make Galion more than successful than ever. So sorry for the soapboxing, but it's this stuff that ended up printed in the Inquirer is as if it had some level of truth. I worry about it taking on a life of its own and clouding all the positive things that are happening, specifically the positive things that happen as a result of having this simple 62-bed hotel. Give me one more second. I know we're probably running along. I didn't know anybody in the class of 68, okay? But what's happening if you get out in the community at all is that you see all summer graduates get with their high school graduates that haven't left town, and they have pretty successful reunions. And if you think that's what was going on in the past, is that they either weren't coming or they were staying out of town again. So, you know, the naysayers on something about how trying to suggest that the sleep-in is somehow bad for Galion and that the taxpayers are going to get stuck with the bill. That's lazy on the part of the people spreading that information, and it just doesn't happen to be true. So, sorry about, at least I haven't taken to tweeting crazy and outrageous stuff that either make you super happy or really piss you off. But, you know, like enough's enough. Enough's enough on hammering away at the hotel and trying to drag in any suspect that they can possibly associate with that conspiracy to make the town better. So.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. We are over our time, but if you wanted to briefly touch base on the project uptown and give an update on that.
Yeah, it's bigger than any of us expected. We had a real positive meeting with really most of the businesses in that block. What we have is another 3 or 4 days. That's not really true. We by Thursday we expect the water line part of the project to be completed. What they're working on now is reestablishing the connections to the existing customers back to this new water line. And it's a line-by-line, largely hand-dug process. So we've got to get through this week to get the water line restored, and then right on the heels of that, we'll have a day or so of replacing the stone on the on Harding Way, east of Keller's or Heath Watkins, the Wagner Law Office, and the Cake and Icing. East of that needs some stone to rebuild that. At the same time, or on the next day, they will mill off the surface course on everything to the west. Let's say from Hillman's Jewelry back up to Payne's and Keller Auto Parts, right in there. And then by the mid part of next week, they would then resurface that entire block. So what started out as resurfacing Boston to Union on Harding Way is going to turn into Boston all the way up to the square. And so if you can bear with us through the 14th or the 15th, the end of next week, that should be open and ready to go. And it's been quite an experience trying to do this, but I think we've done it right to replace the water line through there versus just patching it. And we're trying to keep it within a cost that we can contain. So don't want to run past that. Some of those questions got me a little revved up, but I think that's okay. I think those of us who see the community succeeding are becoming increasingly passionate about defending that progress and pushing back against the people who just can't seem to see how things are going in a different direction. So thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. City Council tomorrow night. Good night.